Well, welcome back, Canonites. I said recently that we'd talk about this, and I had some words to say. Well, it's time to say them. A bonus included with Halo 5 was the Halo Fall of Reach animated series. While I made my skepticism of such a series well known in the weeks and months since it was announced, it's safe to say that by and large, the Halo community was excited. Seeing the origins of the Master Chief brought to life in full animation, bringing it into a light that might have a much larger audience than anything prior, who wouldn't be excited about that? I mean, besides me. While Halo 5 may have been pretty divisive, the Fall of Reach animated series has been significantly less so. At least in the lore community, from what I've seen, a lot of people aren't very happy with the series, and I am fully on board with that hate train. A great story revealing the origins of the Spartan 2s, exploring the ethics and moral ramifications of such a program, and God, I don't even have a word to describe what happened here. Before we get into what will by and large be an angry rant, let's address what the series did well. There are some positives. For one, Sequence, the group behind the series, the terminals in every Halo title since CEA, and the Spartan series cutscenes, has outdone themselves. I know not everyone likes this style, but, well, I do. I really do. And it's been getting better and better with each project. Another positive I'm somewhat reluctant to give the series is, well, it probably accomplished its goal. This series, despite all my misgivings, is an excellent introduction to the expanded universe of the Halo franchise, and if nothing else, I hope it inspires people to pick up the comic adaptation of Fall of Reach, or better, the original book. One last thing to address before we get into the proper review is the biggest sin against this series, the title. Look, I get that it's an adaptation of part of the Fall of Reach novel, hell, even a majority of it. But when your series doesn't even deal with the Fall of Reach, don't call it the Fall of fucking Reach! Seriously, why not Halo Blue Team or Halo Origins? Oh, I'll tell you why. To get people to watch and spend the extra money on this. Those with limited to no knowledge of Halo's lore will just watch it to see some Halo action. But longtime fans, or those at least mildly familiar with the name Reach, are going to put in the extra dinero to either stream it or buy it. It's marketing and profit driven, and while I can't really blame 343 or Microsoft, we are a capitalist society and people gotta get paid, I still hate it. I mean, I'm honestly not sure if I can even stomach to buy this series when it comes out in physical media. I fucking bought Nightfall. I gave that shit a 6 out of 10 and I still bought it. I can even recommend people read Mortal Dictata and I give that a 4 out of 10. But this? I just don't know. Okay. Enough pre-show ranting. Let's get to the main attraction. The bitching a minute details. This is Halo The Fall of Reach animated series. The series opens with Blue Team on the glassed remnants of Reach. So, at least I called that. And right away we have something to complain about. I can't be the only one who think Kelly and Fred look way too young here, right? I mean, they practically look baby-faced. Anyway, Blinda and Chief soon pull off, and why the fuck does all of Blue Team have their helmets off while the Chief keeps his on? I mean, I know the real world reason, but seriously 343, what the fuck? You had the sense to keep their helmets on in Halo 5, why not here? It looks so fucking stupid. For fuck's sake, stop having Spartan 2s remove their helmets and have the Chief keep his on. Use creative angles and or shading to hide his face. You've done it in the past, so why not do it again? And why the hell are Blue Team calling John Chief? They're not on mission, so there's no fucking point. Why are you suddenly so reluctant to use his fucking name? This is a problem in Halo 5 as well, but that's another discussion. So anyway, Blue Team has returned to Reach, their old home, and the series proper begins. After the credits, we see the Haunt, a diplomatic shuttle on its way to observe John, the first of many candidates Halsey would screen for her Spartan program. On board, Halsey is making a journal entry giving us the basics of what's going on, while Lieutenant Jacob Keyes wakes from his cryopod in the back. And we have another error. Why are 343 so afraid of properly showing cryo as it's meant to be depicted? It had always been in the novels that one had to enter cryo without anything on your skin, i.e. naked. Anything touching it would cause blisters and rawness upon waking. Well, until very recently, apparently. At least in this case, you could say it's to save time. I've used that excuse plenty in the past. Creating a nude model of Keyes, even a partial one to just shoot from a certain angle up, does mean an additional model, which means additional time. Anyway, Keyes makes it to the bridge to meet up with Halsey. Now, in the novel, Halsey made the Han's AI, Torin, pause because she had it processing so many tasks. A wonderful show of how smart and able she was, made more powerful by Keyes acknowledging it. In the animated series, we simply get a few commands that sound technical and classical music. As we all know, smart people only listen to classical music. It's a minor thing, but I thought I'd bring it up. Anyway, it isn't long before Halsey and Keyes land on Eridanos 2 to observe John, and it's a lot nicer than I'd always thought. I mean, John is from Elysium City, the capital, but I would not think this to be an outer colony unless you told me. Plus, the King of the Hill game just looks cruel now. John kinda comes off as a dick. From there, Halsey approaches John, pretending she's scouting the school for her own kid, and we get the famous coin flip, and God, how they fucked it up. Here, we just get a series of scenes with John always predicting the coin flips. In the book, John actually grabbed the coin out of the air and accurately predicted which side would face up. It was a wonderful way to show that John wasn't just lucky, but that he made his own luck. The animated series? Well, he's just lucky. And kind of a dick. Not off to a great start. We jump forward to the Spartan candidates being abducted. Quick bit of bitching, minor thing. Kelly's hair should actually be blue at this point, but I get trying to avoid confusing people. I must admit, the whole sequence is overall very emotional and does a great job of relaying the moral issues of the program and Halsey's own moral quandaries. After that, we get the briefing. Again, slightly changed from the book. Originally, each child had their own handler and they weren't so cooperative. Time constraints, though, forgivable in this case. One thing that does confuse me, though, is why the series uses the Orion 2 name at all. Halsey by this time had long since decided on Spartan 2 as her project name, the idea being to distance her work from the failures of the past. Besides just straight up being nonsensical, I can only imagine that more casual fans would be confused by the use of Orion, assuming they just don't care. It's an addition that leaves me utterly confused. I just can't figure out why they'd bring it up at all. After the briefing, we move on to the first day of training, which I must admit is actually pretty well done, for the most part. Overall, the sequences do a good job and give us a good look at the hardships the Spartans would go through, the lessons learned along the way, and introduces us to Kelly and Sam, our other main characters. There's even a nice Easter egg with George referred to as Jorge by a harsh trainer. Sadly, we have yet another fuck-up. Apparently, it's now the case that some trainees actually die during training. Really, Thief 43? Fucking really? The number of active Spartan 2s after the Covenant War are confusing as hell already, but now you're tossing in this bit that a few didn't even make it to the augmentation phase? What the actual fuck? Oh, and even better, Blue Team, originally just Sam, John, and Kelly, now has always included Fred and Linda, as we see both in this scene and a scene later on. God, I know it's for the convenience of the uninitiated, but it still infuriates me. We skip forward 2 years to the famous training sequence that would promote John to the formal leader of the Spartans. And to 343 in Sequence's credit, it's wonderfully done. The camaraderie among the Spartan candidates, their use of tactics and strategy, and John's growth as a leader, all beautifully shown. Of course, they do manage to screw it up at the end. When John is being debriefed by Halsey and Mendez, he is promoted to squad leader, as happens in the book. But then they do something that flies in the face of everything John is, games or otherwise. He asks what the highest rank he could achieve is. This may seem minor, but hear me out. John never cared about rank. He cared only about keeping safe those close to him and doing his duty as a soldier. This is John in a nutshell. Rank has never and would never matter to him. Now yes, he's only 8 at this point, but I think that keeping this particular point of John's personality intact is important. It's one of his major character traits. And worse, all they were trying to do was make a pointless connection to his later rank of Master Chief Petty Officer. John's actions more than explain his achieving that rank later in life. The addition here is pointless, unnecessary, and almost insulting. God. From there, we jump forward to 2525 and the Spartan augmentation process. Again, to 343 in Sequence's credit, the whole sequence is beautifully done. While Deja relays medical reports about the augmentation risks, we get to see those risks manifest. It's brutal, hard to watch, and absolutely effective. Of course, we do come back to the issue of the number of surviving Spartans. Where it was once 30 candidates that died in the process, it's now 27. I find the change entirely unnecessary, and on a personal level, it really fucks with a theory I had to explain some of the inconsistencies with the number of surviving Spartans. After a brief funeral scene, we get one of the worst scenes in the series, the incident at the gym. Now, everything leading up to the fight with the ODSTs is actually pretty good, showing off the Spartan time phenomenon that lore fans are very familiar with, and showing John's change after the augmentations. But the fight itself? Fucking terrible, and it makes John look like a damn psychopath. In the original novel, each ODST went down with a single punch, either severely injured or dead. Now, they can apparently take multiple punches, and worse, when one goes down, John fucking jumps on him and starts beating the shit out of the man. Later, he nearly smashes another man's face in with a weight bar. Now granted, the ODST had attacked John first, but he was fucking done at that point. John now just looks like a psycho. Again, I ask, why the change? It serves no purpose that I can see, it doesn't make the situation any easier to digest for casual fans, and it makes the Spartans look so much weaker than they have traditionally been portrayed. And God, at the end, John has the fucking gall to try and say he was simply defending himself. Jumping on another man is not self-defense. God damn. Moving forward, we get our first hints of the Covenant attack on Harvest before we jump forward to the mission to Eridanus Secundus, the mission to capture Colonel Robert Watts. Strangely, during the mission briefing, they claim that Watts actually killed civilians, which, while is never denied in other media, doesn't really fit with what we know of the man. But like I said, it's never been denied that his actions resulted in the death of civilians, and it does fit in with what we know of the larger insurrectionist movement, so it's small beans in the end. Anyway, after their briefing, Blue Team deploys. Hidden on board a UNSC freighter, the Leyden, they are basically escorted to Watts' location. Just like in the book and the comic, the Spartans infiltrate, take out the guards, and capture Watts. The whole sequence is very well done, and there are actually some nice additions, such as a dream sequence showing how the death of his fellow Spartans during augmentation continues to haunt John, and the use of a particularly famous line among the lore community.
That was stupid, John. Queen doesn't sacrifice everything to collect a pawn.
All the pieces go back in the same box when the game is done.
Words once spoken to Halsey by her grandmother, and Cortana's first words when she was created. With Watts captured, the Spartans escape and head back to UNSC space. Not long after, the full Spartan company is briefed by Admiral Stanforth about first contact with the Covenant. Another wonderfully done sequence, I must say. The declaration of war from a heavily shadowed regret is certainly icing on the cake. From there, we enter the third episode, which jumps us straight to the Battle of Kai City 4 and the Spartans' first engagement with the Covenant. Well, we jump right to the arrival of the UNSC Commonwealth at Kai City, just before the battle. I have to say, there are some great moments in here, such as Fred's comment on UNSC project names.
Does Project Mjolnir mean anything to anyone?
Gotta be some kind of weapon. Brass isn't very imaginative with code names.
And Halsey and Captain Wallace's debate on whether the ghost signal of a Covenant ship was really a threat or not.
There it is again.
Doctor, that puts our ghost at 80 million clicks. Even if it were a ship, and I don't concur that it is, it would take an hour to get within weapons range. Besides, it's disappeared again.
Captain, it is my recommendation that we go to battle stations.
We have plenty of time. Unless there's something you're not telling us.
This is not widely known, Captain, that the alien ships at Harvest disappeared, then reappeared much closer.
An intra-system jump.
We believe so, Spartan.
Not possible. I can tell you that slipstream space simply cannot be navigated that accurately.
You mean we cannot navigate it with that kind of accuracy?
Small moments that really show how much better this series could have been. Anyway, the Commonwealth soon comes under attack by the Unrelenting. As a small bit of canon commentary, both this series and the comic adaptation show the Unrelenting as a CCS-class battlecruiser. In the original novel, Unrelenting is said to be a third the size of the Commonwealth. While a part of me wants to rail against this inconsistency, let's really think about this for a second. The Commonwealth is a Paris-class frigate. Those are usually about 535 meters by 198 meters by 162 meters. Any ship a third that size would be pretty damn small. The closest ship to a reasonable size of the one described would be the CRS-class light cruiser from Halo 4, which, coincidentally, does have a near-identical profile to the CCS. While the ship change is a minor annoyance, I do have to note that the whole point of the smaller ship was to demonstrate just how powerful the Covenant ships were. A frigate was practically taken out by a ship a third its size. It's a point that the animated series sadly misses out on. Sort of. The engagement between the Commonwealth and the Unrelenting is wonderfully entertaining to watch, and it does still manage to show off just how powerful the Covenant are, just not as effectively. Anyway, while the Commonwealth provides cover, Dr. Halsey and the Spartans take Pelicans to Kai City 4, where they're briefed on Project Mjolnir. And once again, a brilliant moment. The unveiling of the armor, the videos showing the armor testing, just brilliant. And as I've said, I love that 343 did try to preserve the Halo Wars design while altering the undersuit to match their new art direction. Sadly, not all is well. The integrated jetpacks are something I will not let pass, I'm sorry. It's a pointless addition when they could have just as easily been depicted as extra equipment as they are in the expanded fiction. Still, it's better than the fucking package armor from Forward Unto Dawn. But even then, I have to say, some of these helmet designs are just terrible. Well, mainly Linda's. They just took her Halo 5 helmet and added the lower section of the normal Mark IV. It looks off, at best. Why not just use the Mark V Scout helmet design like in the comic? It still means an extra helmet design. Anyway, with their new Mjolnir equipped and Commonwealth all but dead in the water, space, Blue Team deploys from a Pelican to take out Unrelenting. And as I mentioned before, Blue Team is now comprised of John, Kelly, Sam, Fred, and Linda. Because marketing. Fucking marketing. So, they deploy. As they approach the ship, they wait for one of the cruiser's plasma torpedoes to fire, which temporarily opens a hole in the shields. The Spartans use this hole to get under the shielding and on board. I'll spare you all a rant about what are often seen as post-war combat harnesses showing up this early in the war. As we've recently learned, stuff like the Storm rank are ranks that have been in service for a long time, even if we've never really seen them before. Personally, I always had it in my head that Jules Covenant used a lot of old tech, so seeing this stuff at the start of the war doesn't really faze me much. The one issue I will continue to harp on, though, is the Grunt combat harness. Now, I must inform you that I mistakenly stated before that the combat harness is said to be post-war exclusive, which is not true, even if it has been somewhat implied. Although, given the advantages this design is said to provide, you'd think they'd have been more widespread during the war. I'm sure we'll see something in the near future, though, about how it's always been around, just gone largely unseen. Anyway, the Spartans make their way to the ship's core, Sam takes a shot to the chest, forcing him to stay behind, the Spartans escape, the ship explodes. We jump back to post-war Reach, Linda carving out the Spartan 2 logo just as Sam did decades ago, and the series concludes. God damn, what a waste of an hour that was for me. I will admit that there are some points I enjoyed, more so while writing this review since I got to watch them in isolation, but the bad is bad, sometimes in ways that I cannot get past. And as I've already said, the title is a complete and utter lie. The brand recognition is damn pointless since the fans it'd be meant to attract are likely going to be disappointed, and fans unfamiliar with the title are going to be confused at worst, unfazed at best. Again, if you're unfamiliar with the expanded universe and lore, this is a great way to jump in, and serves as a fairly decent lead into Halo 5 for that crowd. If you aren't part of that crowd though, this series is a waste of your time. As I've said from the start, I'm not sure I'd be able to buy this when it comes out on physical media next month. I love me my physical copies, but this is one I may avoid for a long time, if not altogether. So, rating time. As I've constantly pointed out how this series could be interpreted based on your background knowledge, I think it's best that I give out 2 ratings. If you're new to the expanded universe, this series is a must-watch, and I can stomach to give it an 8 out of 10. Many of the issues with it are from a canon perspective, not necessarily a production or narrative one. Hell, I'd argue that the narrative actually flows pretty well. However, if you're a lore fan like me, this series gets a 4 out of 10. The lore issues and changes are infuriating, and again, the title is a damn lie. I honestly don't know which is worse, this or Mortal Dictata. Well, probably this since I don't want to buy this. I wouldn't want to rebuy Mortal Dictata, mind you, but I can at least recommend fans read it for themselves before forming an opinion. Anyway, that brings this review to a close. Thanks for watching, and please let me know what you all think of this series. Love it? Hate it? Find yourself somewhere in the middle? I always love hearing back. This has been Halo Canon, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing, and sharing it around. You are the reason I get to keep doing this, so thank you. Profusely, thank you. If you want to dive deeper into Halo's lore, head over to the Halo Archive. It's a lore-based community that welcomes everyone from experts to rookies. No matter what your working knowledge, you'll be sure to find a friend and a good time.